let's talk about the global recovery here and how we are impacted. What are you seeing here? You already mentioned that we're going to have to, grow by 8 to 9%, but we do see the rest of the world. You mentioned the US, they're already having inflation at 40-year highs. How will this affect our economy in terms of exports? There's a report that we're still a laggard in Asia Pacific. Is there going to be some sort of turnaround this year because of better global demand, for instance?
Well, our economy has been domestically driven, no? So it's our huge domestic demand that has been driving our economic growth. Now, our exports is always been a plus, no? Good to know because we have actually we have had troubles. Inspiring our export growth. No? So I'm not so worried about our export growth. But if and when our government and perhaps the next administration will be able to find a way to actually increase our promotion of exports, make sure that we have a favorable depreciated currency to inspire additional production of our export products, then we can actually close the gap in terms of trade. No? So and we can take advantage of the increasing demand in the global economy. Kasi we are a very very small player in this global trade, and so therefore we are not really affected by the swings in the demand of the global economy. So what's important for us from the point of view of exporters are actually cost driven. So transport and shipping costs, etc.
Okay,
Yeah.
so domestic issues, sir. But another thing that might be more important to our economy, perhaps not exports in particular, but remittances.
Yeah.
And that's the same global story. When there's more employment elsewhere, we tend to benefit it as a windfall, and that does drive consumption. We did see an all-time high in 2021, but actually the estimates were higher, at least for the last quarter, than what came out. How is this story going to change? Can we still rely on remittances to fuel consumption?
Yeah, well, different from the story of the exports, our remittances are actually driven by the global demand, no? So global growth. And I'm positive that as we see the recoveries of nations, especially the US, the Europe, Japan, so we can expect higher remittances as we see more growth in the global shipping industry. So we have huge supply for maritime labor force. So we can only see, we can expect that higher remittances will flow in to the Philippines as we experience higher global growth.
For how long can the BSP afford to stay patient on its policy stance? When do we expect them to keep track of rate hikes seen, at least in the Bank of England, and then also the looming tightening from the Fed?
Certainly not within the first half of this year. With increased risk in inflation, they can consider hiking the policy rate by the next half of this year. But I'm positive that they have the elbow room to actually delay the rate hike all the way to the end of this year. Why? Because we need more growth than the control of inflation. And remember, in 2017, that already happened as well, no? When the Fed had several increases in their policy rate, but we maintained our rates and it did not affect our inflation. And so there's really that divergence between the policy action of the Fed and the BSP, whereas the Fed is driven by their historical increases in their inflation. However, our case is not a case of too much surge in demand, but we are still recovering. In fact, we will still hit the pre-pandemic level in the second half of this year, but we're just talking about recovering the losses from the 2020 negative 9.6% reduction in GDP. Meaning, we have not talked about recovering our foregone growth momentum over the last 5 to 10 years before the pandemic, which we were growing at 6.6%. So kung i-add pa natin yung 6.6% average growth rate every year, so we should be focusing on growing our economy at 8 to 9% every year if we are to shorten our recovery period and hitting our original momentum.